video has been produced primarily with a do-it-yourselfer in mind. It will not make you a professional auto body technician in itself. A professional earns that status only through formal education and years of dedication to the trade. However, by watching this video, you'll be able to take advantage of many years of experience as you see some tricks of the trade that can make your repairs as successful as mine. Now, a successful repair is one that not only looks good, but it must be strong and durable. This strength and durability is achieved during the initial stages of the repair. That is the purpose of this video, to teach you some basics and fundamentals you'll need to know to make many of your own repairs. Now let's look at some tools and products that you'll need to use to make your own repairs. These basic materials are available to you in various retail outlets. Although while most auto body shops make large investments in professional state-of-the-art tools and equipment to give you professional service, you can see the similarity between the do-it-yourself tools I'll be using in this video and the basic professional tools in the upper right corner of your screen. We'll need a drill and sanding kit, hammer, sanding block and sandpaper, spreaders, dent and ding kit pull rods, and some straight edges. In addition, we'll need Bondo, reinforced body filler, primer paint, glazing and spot putty, and masking tape. To ensure your personal safety, always use eye goggles and dust masks during sanding and priming. Also, use rubber gloves at any time working with these products with any open cuts on your hands.
Safety is your responsibility. Always adhere to all product labels. The procedures outlined in this video do not in any way imply that you should use any of the products mentioned in this video in a manner inconsistent with the manufacturer's intended use. Pay particular attention to any cautions or warnings the manufacturer may have indicated on the product labels. Be familiar with the operation of power tools before using them. Use sound judgment and common sense when using them. Do not use flames or create sparks around flammable materials. Keep these materials at a safe distance during grinding operations. Always wear eye protection and dust mask when sanding or grinding. Keep floor and work area neat. Work in a well-ventilated area.
Now let's begin to prep the car for our repair. Begin by washing the damaged area with the sponge and soapy water. This is necessary to remove any tar, wax, or other substances that may cause poor bonding. Sponge or pat the area with your clean rag to remove any excessive amounts of water. You might want to have a fan blowing toward the damage to help it dry quickly. Be sure to have the fan and cord a safe distance from the water to avoid electric shock. And while this is drying, let's go back to the workbench. I want you to become familiar with working with the filler before we attempt any repair. Cut your box as I've done and add about 1/4 cup of filler to the box. The cutout allows you to put the filler onto the box without dropping any of it on the can or workbench. Add the required amount of hardener, about 1.5 inch stream, 2-inch stream, and mix the two together as I'm doing, kind of pushing the filler into the box as you mix it. Don't mix it in swirling motions such as that. That would only add air to the mixture, and it'll show up in later stages of the repair. By pushing the filler into the box as I'm doing, you kind of push the air out of the mixture. Mix with these overlapping motions like that until you have a uniform color and you're sure that the mixture is thoroughly mixed. When you're sure that the mixture is thoroughly mixed, spread it out in the box. You'll notice that you're actually filling in some of the dimples left by the cola cans. That's kind of like a practice run of filling a small ding in your car. Take notice of the time it takes for this mixture to harden. If it hardens too quickly, use less hardener for your repair. If after 15 to 20 minutes it's still not hard, use a little more hardener for your repair. Working in the hot sun causes the filler to harden very quickly. Clean your spreader with a rag now before the mixture hardens on it. Your spreader will remain like new for many repairs this way. Each time you're through mixing your filler, scrape the sides of the can down and keeps it fresh that way. Now let's get back to our repair. It is often difficult to determine the depth of a dent just by looking at it. Professionals often use a straight edge to check the depth of a dent before they begin the repair and in various stages of the repair. Often there are high spots around the edge of a dent. You can see this because the ruler is rocking back and forth. There's a high spot in the metal right here. These must be lightly tapped in with your hammer before you apply any filler. You might also check the damaged area with the same area on the opposite side of the car to check the contour of it. Tape over any chrome and surrounding areas before you begin sanding. I'm going to sand as much of the dent as I can now before I attempt to pull it. Okay. This damage already has been filled one time in the past. This dent showed no indication of a previous repair. By this example, you can see that even when damaged, Bondo is not as apt to crack or peel as many people believe. We're going to grind all that old filler out. I'm through sanding now. Notice that I've used a very coarse paper and it has really roughed up the metal. This will ensure excellent adhesion of the body filler. Notice that I've also drilled about a ½ inch hole in this piece of plywood. I'm going to put the plywood on the back side of the dent and we'll be able to pull a larger area of the dent rather than just a small area of the pull rod.
Warning: inspect your pull rod at various stages of the repair. By applying an excessive pulling force on the pull rod, it is possible for the hooked end of the pull rod to gradually straighten out. If this happens while you are pulling the dent, you may tumble backwards as the pull rod slips out of the hole you drilled. Have a safe landing area behind you in case this happens.
We put the pull rod through the dent along with the plywood and the washer. I'm going to pull the dent now. As I'm pulling the dent, I'm going to tap on the high spots we mentioned earlier. Notice how easy the dent is to pull as we tap the high spots. This is because I'm applying steady pressure to the back of the dent with the pull rod and the plywood. The impact of the hammer is actually transferred through the metal to the back side of the dent. I'm going to need to drill another hole down here. We're going to insert the pull rod back through the dent. We're going to use our wood. We're going to check it again with our straight edge. I still feel this is a little bit too deep. We're going to drill another hole right there. Little high spot there. We're going to tap it in just a little bit. Let's repair this damage with regular lightweight body filler. But before we begin to mix any of the filler, have your work area, your damage, and all your tools clean and close by. You wouldn't want to start looking for your materials once you've added hardener to the filler. Okay, now let's mix a generous amount of filler in the tray. Notice how I give the stick a quick twist as I pull it out of the tray to keep the filler from falling all over the can and all over the workbench and everywhere like that. Notice the cans in the corner of the screen. I'm going to continue mixing my filler, and I'll tell you more about these cans in a minute. Add the desired amount of hardener. Mix it back and forth into the tray. As I said earlier, mix it till you have a uniform color, pushing the filler into the tray as we did earlier, working the air bubbles out. I need to put this on the dent now, and while I'm applying it to the dent, I'm going to intentionally allow some of the filler to fall on my jeans. I want to show you a little trick. Put it on with firm, even strokes in the first coat. Hold your tray under the repair to catch any filler that might fall. Now I'm going to show you a technique that will reduce your sanding time. Pick up your straight edge and wipe the filler smoothly over the repair. The filler has already taken the shape of the contour of the car. You want to clean your straight edge now before the filler hardens, and it'll be ready to use again for the next repair. Smooth the remaining filler out in your tray. When it hardens, it'll be ready to go again. While I was making the repair, I intentionally allowed some of the filler to fall onto my jeans. This was to show you an easy cleanup technique. Do not attempt to wipe it clean before it hardens. Instead, leave it alone for now. Let's go back and talk about those filler cans I mentioned earlier. I'd like to make a couple of interesting points about them. First, my can on the left can be properly sealed since there's no filler all over the rim. That'll keep the remaining filler fresh for future repairs. Another way to ensure all your filler remains fresh is to scrape the inside of the can downward after each use. You'll be able to use all the filler that you've paid for. Secondly, and probably even more important, is that I'll be able to use all the filler in future repairs. I won't be throwing away any excessive amount of waste. The can on the left will be environmentally safer to recycle or discard than the can on the right. About 10 minutes have passed. Watch how easily the Bondo peels off of my pants. If you try to do that before the Bondo was hard, you would have smudged it all into your blue jeans. Okay, let's use coarse sandpaper and our sanding block, and we're going to knock off the high spots of the filler and rough up the low spots, and then we're going to apply a second coat of filler. You can see how the filler is already beginning to take the original shape of the car. We've got the first coat of filler completely sanded, and now we're going to fill in these low spots with a pretty liberal second coat. Here's a tip for applying the filler. Don't grip the spreader so tight that it bends here. Instead, hold it firmly against the repair so that the area of contact with the repair is as straight and flat as possible. I've got this sanded to the original shape of the car now, and you can actually see where around the edges of the filler, it's feather edging into the original body. I've got a lighter grit of sandpaper now. This is 80 grit, and we're going to take a few of the sand scratches back out. Okay, now I've just finished sanding this repair with the 80 grit sandpaper and the sanding block. Now I'm going to put 2 or 3 coats of primer on there to fill in the little sand scratches and pit holes left in the filler, allowing about 2 to 3 minutes between each coat of primer. Okay, after applying about 4 coats of primer, we've allowed it to dry for about 20 minutes. We're going to sand it now with about 180 grit sandpaper. Just lightly sand the primer. Okay, now we've lightly sanded the primer with 180 grit sandpaper and a sanding block. Now I'm going to dust this primer off, the repair off, and I'm going to use glazing putty to further fill in any scratches that were left in the filler. Apply the glazing putty in real tight, firm strokes. Very thin coats. It's only used to fill the sand scratches and pits left in the filler. It's not intended to be used to fill in dings. And that should do it. We're going to let that dry for about 15 to 20 minutes, and then we'll resand that with the 180 grit sandpaper. Be sure to clear your spreader now before it dries. Okay, we've resanded the repair with the 180 grit sandpaper. You can notice now that the glazing putty is very thin coat, only filling the sand scratches and little air pockets left by the filler. We're going to dust this off and reprime this. Repeat the last 2 stages of this repair using primer paint and glazing putty until you're sure you've worked out all the sand scratches and things. Then if you want a really slick finish, use wet sandpaper and just glide over the repair real lightly. Sponge off the primer paint that you've just sanded, and you'll have a real slick finish. This brings us to the end of our first repair. I hope your repairs turn out successful as mine. Now let's apply the principles we've just learned to a larger repair. As in our first repair, the advantages of using a straight edge to apply body filler to the dent are obvious. If the original contour of the metal is relatively flat, the straight edge can follow the contour of the undamaged area around the dent and in one even application form the bondo to the damaged area's original shape. While this technique cannot always be used, it does save hours of sanding on hoods, fenders, doors, etc. I'm going to be able to use the plywood on the back of this dent as in our earlier repair. But before I do, I'll show you a technique that you could use if you can't reach the back side of the dent. As in the illustration, I've drilled holes in the creases of this dent, and I'm going to use pull rods to pull the dent. But first we'll need to grind the dent. So let's go back to our fender repair. Before we sanded this area, we taped the chrome, the cowl vent, and surrounding area. The filings created when grinding are not only very corrosive to the exterior finish of your car, but can also be very damaging to the inner body structures. These filings can cause rust at the first sign of moisture or humidity. This plastic drop cloth was used only 3 days ago on a previous repair. Notice how the filings have already turned to rust. The plywood is in place behind these pull rods. I'm going to use an assistant because I'm going to use both hands pulling on the dent. An assistant will tap some of the high spots of the dent. This dent is a little more difficult to pull than our earlier repair. I'm going to need to drill a few more holes around the edge of the dent so it will pull easier. If you're just tapping that high spot right there a little bit as I'm pulling, we've worked a lot of this dent out now. Let's check the area with our straight edge. We're a little high in this area. This area of the dent is still a little bit low. So I'm going to drill 2 more holes here and pull a little bit more of that out. And then we'll go ahead and wipe the dent with a fiberglass reinforced filler. I'm not going to use a plywood now because I'm only pulling a small area of the dent. Because of the size of this dent and the number of holes I've had to drill to pull it, I'm going to use fiberglass reinforced body filler for my first coat. You'll mix it and apply it just as you would regular lightweight body filler. This type of filler is actually easier to use because it has body and does not droop or sag on vertical surfaces. Apply it just as you would regular lightweight body filler. Leave an excessive amount of filler on the lowest portion of the dent. And pick up your straight edge and pull it up over the dent. With the exception of a couple of low spots, the filler is already shaped to the original contour of the fender. We've roughed up the coat of fiberglass reinforced filler with our sanding block and coarse sandpaper. Now we're going to apply a second coat of lightweight filler over the low spots. Lightweight body filler is much easier to sand, so you want to use it as your final coats of filler. With minimal sanding, this repair is nearly complete. I'm going to apply another coat of lightweight Bondo. When you've reached this final coat, complete the repair with primer and glazing putty as we did in our first repair. I've actually spent about 4 hours on this dent with less than $40 in materials, and it's about ready to paint. Visit any of your local auto parts stores, and I'm sure you'll find a counterman who'll be glad to help you identify your car's original color.
Hey Al, what can I do for you today?
Johnny, I've got to pick up some paint for the neighbor's car. I need to look at your paint charts.
Okay, good. Right here in the front aisle.
Paint charts such as this one show you where the paint color ID number is located on your car and how to read it. It also provides color chips to help you identify your car's original color. You can also order a factory color paint kit from Bondo. Details can be found in the Dent and Ding kit. I hope you've enjoyed this video and you'll benefit from my tips. In future videos, I intend to show you how you can customize your own car just as this Camaro's been done. You can build your own hood scoops, fender flares, ground effects, and things of that nature. If you'd like to learn more, write to Smart Body Shop Talk, P.O. Box 761, Mary Esther, Florida, 32569.